Native Land Pod is a production of iHeart Radio in partnership with Reason Choice Media.
Welcome
home, everybody. This week's MiniPod is something that Tiff brought up on our last show, which was talking about the 90 million people who are eligible to vote in this country but did not show up for the 2024 elections. There has to be some breakdown with how we're being seen or not, whether we can feel comfortable participating in a process that hasn't really represented our interests or not. And we were talking about this in the context of the DNC, the RNC, who each party represents, and all of the people who are falling somewhere in between or just falling through the cracks, period. So given the compassionate people that we are, and in some ways, the ways that we completely align with the folks who don't feel seen by either or anything in between, we just wanted to have a conversation about that. So she asked, what do you believe in? And I think this is a really good question for those of you who watch the show, listen to the show. And for those of you who don't, I'm really intrigued, y'all, honestly, about the people who we don't hear from regularly, who don't feel seen, who don't even want to participate in politics because they're like, it's not for me. I don't get it. When I do try, Andrew talked about on the show too, when I do try, the folks who I want to win don't win. So where we go from here, y'all?
Yeah, I love the conversation around what do we believe in, because I think if we just start small, right? And if you tell somebody like, hey, you live on this block, this is your neighborhood. And if you're responsible for these 5 blocks, that means everybody paying you $50 a month. And you're responsible for the budget. You're responsible for how all the kids in the school, like how are they learning? You're responsible for what businesses can operate in this store. You're responsible for zoning, what houses can look like. And you give people a sense of their own agency about how they can construct democracy. I think we have to start there. And I think this is what the listener question was asking before about like civics lessons, about even understanding how government works to believe in it. And I just think before we, ask people to do another MFing thing, if we just take a step back and start there, that might be a better way. Angela, something you said, I wrote it down when you said it because I thought it was so good. You said there's always space for our work and not space for our needs. And I think that is kind of where I am right now. I'm not really interested in upholding the white man's democracy as much anymore, but I am interested in protecting my people. The challenging part is those two things go hand in hand. Should this democracy fall, my people will fall first and suffer the most. Should something bad happen, it will be worse for us. So how we can meet in the middle. And the thing is, when we win, the country wins.
Yeah, that's right.
When we do well, the country does well. So, and I haven't figured that out. So this conversation is a bit premature for me because I haven't even been reading like I used to. I mean, I'm telling y'all, I am so checked out. I can't not read anything. So I might read 2 or 3 things in the morning, but mainly it's like philosophical stuff, think pieces. Like I'm not up to speed on what's happening everywhere. I'm just like, who gives a shit? Whatever. I need a break. In January, I'll be back. But I too am searching for what it is I believe in. So I can't even tell y'all what to believe in. I'm searching for what I believe in. And I'm asking the viewers who are watching this, tell me what you believe in. Because I need to hear, I need community right now to tell me. Yeah. Like, Tiffany, you don't have a right to feel this way. This is what I believe in because there were people who had even less than you that believed in something and kept going. So I would kick the question to the audience. I would love to hear from you all. What is keeping you going? What do you believe in?
I want to double down on that because I do think where we have to be now is in the posture of receiving, of listening, of having ears and hearts and minds that are open, an attitude of curiosity and not judgment, a spirit of recognizing that we don't have the monopoly on right, and the ability to see very clearly that every single person is by and large self-motivated, that self-interested and self-motivated. So, and what I mean by that is I think I used to carry more judgment about the fact that people are going to do just what they want to do, nothing more. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. If we understand the place that people are coming from, in fact, I think all of us can respect it because we're actually doing the same damn things in our own lives. It just looks more altruistic because more people appear to be served by that. But in truth, the reason why, Tiffany, what you said is true, is so true that when Black people do well, the country does well, is because and this is where the exhaustion comes in. We oftentimes have to fight the hardest and the longest for what it is that we get. And when we do get it, everybody else in the pecking order has already gotten it first. We're just, should we be in the fight for an expansion of rights, for an expansion of opportunity? That very rarely, if ever, are you going to see that expansion be limited just to our community. In fact, I don't know a policymaker out there who's going to say that the expansion is limited to just that group. When we fight for it and it's won, it is a win that everyone gets to benefit in the largest of. Take affirmative action, for instance. We may have been on the front lines of that battle, absolutely on the front lines of that battle. We, however, were not the greatest beneficiaries of it. In fact, the greatest beneficiaries, I ain't never seen at a town hall meeting talking about defending it. I ain't never seen at the congressional hearing talking about how much wealth was built from that opportunity. Never. So it is in fact true. The reason why this tide lifts all boats is because we're at the damn crest of it. And so, it dives down. They're at the apex. They're at the peak of it. We're the thing that dives in first. And so I understand the exhaustion and the reason why people want to withdraw. And what I would ask people in return is just examine for a moment as you go throughout your day, how many other people, how many other bodies, decision-making bodies, how many entities outside of yourself are really dictating your actions. When you're working to pay a bill to somebody. When you're at when you're exhausted by the fact that there's not a grocery store local, and so you're spending more gas to travel across town just to get to a decent grocer, consider all the people who are making decisions about the things that you and I do every single day outside of us. And then the reason why, Tiffany, I say don't rush back into the news in the day of and what's happening right now is because our focus and emphasis on the what's happening from moment to moment extracts us from the place where we really need to be, which is in a place of thought and maybe in a place of imagination and a place of curiosity, because we're only dealing with the brass tacks. And the way that we, I think, re-engage people is by allowing us together, first individually and then collectively, to dream. And more dreams then beget more beliefs, then beget more tactical things to do, then begets more actions. And so I right now, the posture, it has to be, I think, listening. And then I think it has to be walking away with a much clearer understanding of where people are. And from there, build an agenda and a plan of action that gets us to free.
I think that's so good. I'm stuck on when you said people are largely self-interested and self-motivated. And I'm stuck there because, we also did a MiniPod on like convincing, like if you're trying to convince or not. I'm always trying to convince, even I can be dead wrong and I'm still going to try to convince you to my position till I figure out I'm wrong and be like, my bad.
Right.
But the thing that I'm stuck on is this idea of people being largely self-interested and self-motivated. Because I was raised with the belief that we are all inextricably linked. And I was thinking about this conversation we had in Tunica, Mississippi. The CBC Institute convenes there every year. And during the policy conference, we did a showing of Parchment, the Parchment documentary. And the mayor in that area, he was a state legislator in that area, did a panel with us. And afterwards, what we talked about was industry going into the Mississippi Delta so that people wouldn't have to work at Parchman Prison. And why were we having that conversation? Well, this elected official was saying to us that he cannot support the closing of this prison where, you know, folks' rights have been violated day after day. There's been death after death, deplorable, horrible, awful, inhumane conditions. But he can't support the closing of that because the Delta is already poor and there was nowhere for people to go. Yeah. And so you understand that, but it's like, at what cost? Like, we're talking about jobs versus life or death. And he's talking about if they're not working, then hunger, then whatever could also lead to death. And so there's this hierarchy that we often are moving through, and we flatten these conversations so much so that they're black or white and there's no gray. And there always is gray. But Andrew, to the point of imagination, there was no imagination. It was like parchment or bust. It was like, that is the only pathway.
Imagination's a privilege.
Oof. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Imagination is a privilege.
Yeah.
It's a privilege.
Wow. Yeah, it is.
I just want to punctuate that context.
Yeah, it is.
Because everybody may not be familiar with the lack of humanity that was happening at Parchman Prison.
Is.
If you haven't seen the documentary, is happening.
Yeah.
Thank you. Is happening. I encourage you to watch that documentary. Because when you have somebody in your own community who looks like us, who's saying, no, I have to keep up this institution of Black oppression and enslavement, living in the worst possible conditions because the overseers will lose their job and that will lead to more. I mean, that shows you how truly effed up.
Because we have to eat. The because is I have to put food on the table. I have to pay the bills. And while I have compassion for those people, this is the self-interested piece that I mentioned. And all of us have it. We have to eat first. We have to eat first. I cannot feed you. We have to eat first. Why? Because our body will demand it. It will force us to do it. This is what Maslow's hierarchy of needs is all about, right? Food, shelter, safety, security. You will do those things before I can ever step outside of to care for you. You will do that for yourself first. It is not only a privilege to sort of imagine, but it is also a privilege to be able to think outside of yourself, to have considerations outside of yourself, and then next to yourself, your house and home.
But it's also, it's not, imagination is absolutely a privilege. It was chilling when you said that. But it's also necessary. Like,
it's a
there is no way for us to be a truly liberated people without imagination. We have to believe there is another way. We have to.
Agreed.
There's a book called How to Get to Yes. We have to get to yes. And I know it is so hard when systemically you see over and over. We see over and over. There is no other way out. Our freedom, I was talking to my book editor yesterday, but our freedom is literally the way that we view freedom as Black people. When I say we, I'm talking about Black folks. We see it within the context of oppression. We don't see freedom outside of, I just want to live. I just want to survive. I just want to be left alone. You know, even in the moments where our freedom has just been leaving us alone, that has been in the context of the trauma that is resulting from slavery and oppression and being a stolen people. So it's hard to talk about imagination when our existence has been shaped through the lens of trauma.
Absolutely. And the contrast to what's different is always going to be by the means of what already exists.
Yeah, that's true.
So your ability to think about what's different is almost always going to be juxtaposed to what exists versus what if we had a blank slate?
Yeah.
What if there was no before this? And then what might I create? Because I might not have a 5-day work week if I were dealing from scratch. I might not, the world might not exist that my healthcare be tied to a job that I have. That my retirement and pension is tied to a place where I work versus my existence on this earth entitles me to a certain set of things. And then a structure gets built to then support that. So So you're so right about the hostage, but also the imprisonment of our minds that exist, and without even our knowing, without us being conscious to the imprisonment. It was Carter G. Woodson who says, if you tell a man to go to the back door, and if he goes to the back door and there is no back door, he will cut one out for its special purpose. Why? Because its education makes it necessary. This was him framing the black man, right? We know to go to the back door. And if there is no back door, we will cut one out, create that back door there, because our education, the way we have been taught through life, through generation, through the ancestors, this is our proper place. Mm-hmm. And if we had the ability, the freedom to extricate ourselves from that, and to imagine not in juxtaposition to the conditions that we have lived in, but in relationship to nothing except our highest hopes and dreams for ourselves, and let it go from there. And there's still extrication that will have to be done even at that point, because the bonds, the blood is so deep. The soil is wet from the blood of our ancestors, even still. So it's deep, like we talk about intergenerational trauma. We can't even name the thing that happened, but we're still reeling from it.
That's right.
It's wild.
Well,
so listening, I think, is where we are, y'all.
Well, we still have to listen. We want to hear from you all. This is so deep. We don't have enough time we barely scratched the surface, but it's an ongoing conversation for all of us. In our individual chat, we talking about it. When we're, with our family members and friends, we're talking about it, and we're certainly talking about it with you all, and want to continue to explore this with our Native Land Pod fam. So thank you so much, and welcome home, y'all.
That's right.
Native Land Pod is a production of iHeart Radio in partnership with Reason Choice Media. For more podcasts from iHeart Radio, visit the iHeart Radio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows.